Good day, everyone, and welcome to today's episode of Internet as Stress Reliever or Deliverer. Hi, I'm Cheska Talyonka, a freshie from BS Biology in UPLB, and I'm so glad that you're tuning in. Today, we're diving about something that affects us all stress. More specifically, we're going to talk about the Internet's role in our stress. Does it help us unwind or does it just add to our stress? In this episode, I'll be sharing my own experience of how the internet has both helped me survive stress and at times delivered even more stress. So, you might be wondering, why are we talking about this? Well, I want to shed some light on how everyone's experience with stress is different. And sometimes, what works for one person might not work for someone else. The internet is a powerful tool depending on how we use it. In today's episode, I'll share what I've learned from my own journey and why it's important to find what works for you. So, I hope that you guys are ready and let's get into it. I think we are all very aware that the internet is a very powerful tool. It connects us with the world, lets us access information quickly, and provides endless entertainment with just one click. One of the more popular ideas going around lately is how the internet can act as a stress reliever. You've probably seen influencers sharing about how binge watching, gaming, or even listening to podcasts helps them relax. But here's the thing, it's not always that simple. Research shows that while the internet can indeed be a stress reliever, it can also have the opposite effect. According to a study by Wanley et al., 63% of university students reported using the internet to escape from problems or relieve negative moods like stress. However, the same study found that this coping strategy often backfires. Many students ended up experiencing negative emotional states like frustration and guilt due to excessive internet use. Let me start by comparing two ways my twin and I use the internet to manage stress. My twin loves podcasts, specifically horror podcasts. It might sound strange, but for her, listening to spooky stories while doing her task helps her unwind. I'd watch her do her task while listening to a horror podcast using a speaker. Totally relaxed even though the podcast was super scary. After watching her for a long time, naturally, I got curious. I saw so many posts and tips online saying, if you want to relax, listen to a podcast. So, I decided to try it. I figured, if it worked for my twin, maybe it will work for me. I was already so curious, so why not try it? I followed the advice and chose a podcast. It was called The Science of Happiness. It shares research that sets strategies on how to live a happier life. But here's the twist. Instead of being relaxed, I ended up stressing out. I found myself overthinking whether I was really learning or becoming happier. And it just added to my stress. I remember listening to the first episode of the podcast. I didn't really learn or remember anything at all. I just thought to myself, maybe the reason why there are no results is because it's just my first time listening to a podcast. That's when I decided to be chill about it and just hope for the best tomorrow. However, it didn't really turn out better. I was more stressed and even proceeded on taking notes while listening. Ironically, trying to follow this podcast stressed me out more. I ended up not finishing the podcast because at that point, I just realized that nothing good will happen if I still continue with this. I was feeling that much stress during our summer vacation just because of listening to a podcast. This experience was during my senior high school days. Back then, I thought I was supposed to do things like listening to educational podcasts to be productive even when I was relaxing. But all it did was backfire. Instead of being relaxed, I felt more stress. And that's when I realized just because something works for others doesn't mean it's going to work for you. So, why didn't podcasts work for me when they work effectively for my twin? I think it has to do with the fact that different people need different things to distress. Yes, we're twins. But no, we are not the same person. Just because we share some similar traits doesn't mean we're identical in every way. For example, I like pink, she likes blue. I love going out, and she enjoys staying in. It's funny because I always remind people that we don't share the same preferences. But when I was looking for a way to distress, I forgot this myself and just copied my sister's routine. When the podcast didn't help, I started feeling like I wouldn't be able to relax at all. It wasn't until later in college that I realized there are so many other ways to unwind using the internet. For example, I used to avoid playing video games or watching series when I'm stressed. I have seen plenty of my friends get stressed over a tough level in a game or binge watch shows and then feel guilty for wasting time. So, I convinced myself that those options would only add to my stress too. But now that I'm in college, I decided to give these things a try. And guess what? They actually help me relax. I enjoy playing games and watching movies. I just didn't like the idea of using them as a stress reliever before. During the summer before college, I spent time playing games and watching shows on Netflix. And when college started, I was so worried that I'd be overwhelmed by stress and schoolworks. Then one Friday night, after a particularly stressful week, I randomly opened Roblox and started playing. To my surprise, I felt so much better after playing for a while. I've also been dealing with a hectic schedule, traveling back and forth between Los Baños and Quezon City every week for medical checkups. I thought traveling would add to my stress and fatigue, but it didn't. Every Saturday, my boyfriend and I would watch the Netflix series Frog. Despite the intensity of the show, I found myself being relaxed. Now, I've built a routine that helps me manage stress every week. On Friday nights, I play Roblox, and on Saturdays, I watch Frog on Netflix. These activities give me the mental break I need to recharge and face the week ahead. So here's the lesson I learned from all of this. Stress relief is personal. What works for someone else might not work for you. Just because my twin finds peace in listening to horror podcasts doesn't mean I will. The key is to explore and discover what actually helps you relax. For me, it turned out to be playing games and watching series. But for you, it could be something entirely different. So here are my tips. First, don't just copy what you see others are doing. Explore different options. Whether it's podcasts, games, movies, or even online communities. Second, if something doesn't work, don't force it. It's okay to move on and try something else. And third, strike a balance. Even though I love using the internet to relax, I also make sure to spend time offline. Whether that's going for walks, exercising, or just chilling outside. Balance is essential to keeping stress in check. To wrap things up, the internet can be both a stress reliever or a stress deliverer. It really depends on how you use it. My twin and I are proof of that. While she finds comfort in listening to horror podcasts, I discovered that playing games and watching series is what really helps me distress. Remember, what works for one person might not work for another. So take the time to find what works for you. Your peace of mind is worth the search. So, I encourage you to reflect on your own habits. Are they helping or hurting your stress levels? they aren't working. Maybe it's time to try something new. Thanks for listening, and I hope this helps you on your journey to a stress free life. Again, I'm Chaska, and see you again next time. Stay mindful, stay relaxed.